So yeah, in response to this tweet with Maui Stank, I've just shot Gomez a DM real quick because I was intrigued by this. While great for the scene, this was the biggest mistake in my IMO, in my opinion. And I just shot Gomez a DM real quick, and turns out he was down to hop on a call real quick. So we're just gonna bring him on and see what's going on. I want to explore this a little bit. So yeah, this is like been a hot topic, I guess, or a hot topic behind the scenes. What's up, Gomez? How's it going, dude?
Yeah, not much, not much. What are you guys up to?
Oh, it's just been so long, man. I can't remember the last time we met each other in person. It's been freaking ages. I mean,
Back when lands were a thing.
back when lands were a thing. I know, right? It's such a trip, and yet here we are. I'm popping on. I love that I can just pop on the phone with you, and it's like perfect time zone for you too, because you're back in Aussie, right? So you don't even.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
Just
evening
afternoon
time.
for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
afternoon, evening time, dude. That's so good. I love it. I'm gonna get you. You're gonna hop on the show all the time, dude. Because I can't find anybody because Europeans don't wake up early, right? This is a morning show EU time, and they don't wake up early. So I'm just alone up here, waiting until like 11. Maybe somebody wakes up. But Sniper shows up in the chat every now and again. We shoot the shit. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna be sending you messages more often now that I know you're back in Aussie land. How's everything?
No
How's
worries.
everything been down there?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Australia's pretty good for COVID. We just had a little mini spike yesterday, but in general, Australia goes like weeks without any cases at all, like for the whole country pretty much. So
Are you guys back to normal then? That's it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't worn a mask in since since I was in America. So since what, November?
And you were in LA too, so just a cesspool.
Yeah, yeah. So Australia's completely back to normal. Everyone goes to live sports. Everyone goes to concerts and things like that, and restaurants, food, everything's available. It's just completely normal.
Dude,
Single
that's so
digit
good.
sort of cases for the whole country.
That's so good. Well, good on that. Good on you. Welcome, welcome. But dude, I mean, let's just jump into it, right? Because like this is something that I felt kind of conflicted about, and I kind of took it out a little bit when Cloud9 announced when Cloud9 made their announcement. Before I was kind of speculating as to who let go who, but when Cloud9 made their announcement, they're like, yeah, we're moving on. And we're done with this, like we're gonna put this on hiatus, all that sort of thing, right? Where I was like, oh, okay, cool. So you just get to end contracts when you feel like it, right? That was kind of my take on the situation. But this is like a different one in the sense that you're saying it was the biggest mistake to make numbers like this
Yeah,
publicly
well,
available.
yeah, well, like I said, I think it'd be really good for the scene if everyone could commit to doing it, because then at least you're playing the same game.
Sure.
But by one team doing it, you're just a target. You just have a massive target on your back because people know exactly what you paid for that roster, and then they can make stupid memes. Like, it, you know, whatever they paid, I don't know what it was. I mean, I guess people could probably do the math if they added up all the contracts, but other teams have paid more. And had less success. Other teams have played less, probably had more success. Like,
Yeah.
there's heaps of examples out there, and no, they just don't get brought up at all because people just don't know. So that's why I think it was like kind of a bit maybe naive to do it like straight off the bat. And the other part of it too is like they were doing it after every single person was announced, which is another thing I probably wouldn't have recommended because I think it put them in a worse spot for negotiating. I think it took away all their power because people can see like, oh, SNTag got
Aha.
this much, and he's want this much, and then you try and negotiate with the player, and he says he wants X, you say no, we'll pay you Y, and then like, well, you obviously got the money, you just paid 1.2 million for this guy, or you paid 600K for that guy. You've obviously got money. Any team looking to sell, which is I'm guessing how they paid so much for Tag, would be like, well, you paid this much for Woxic and Alex, like you've got the money, like
Yeah.
pay it. So I feel like if you had to do it or you felt strongly about doing it, then I would have done it at the end after all five. We've signed our roster. This is what we paid for each player. This is what it is. Like, and still release the actual numbers, but just at the end, that way you're not sort of sort of over a barrel, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't have done it individually, one by one. I think that was made it really hard to negotiate. Probably the fourth and fifth guy. I'm only just speculating, but once everyone saw numbers, everyone knew they were playing, you know, a big boy game, and anyone or any sort of agent worth half his value would have been pushing really hard to get a really good deal for that fourth and fifth guy. Would be
Mm-hmm.
my guess.
I mean, that's been our a running joke on the stream every morning is we check the Astralis stock price, the Astralis share price, and the joke is that there was obviously a bump when they sold Esatag because that's probably one of the biggest and best deals ever to go down in CS:GO history, in trade history, selling Esatag for as much as they did, and then trying to sell Bubsky for I think the same. It's just like mega plays coming out of the Astralis camp with that one, considering
Yeah,
what Cloud9 got out of him in the end, right? The meme price tag.
yeah. Like if all the teams, so like we'll just take an example, like all the Louvre ESL teams, if they all came out at the end of the season and announced even just their total budget just for players only of what they've spent in buyouts and salary, at least then it would be somewhat more, I guess, reasonable to sort of figure out who's paying too much and who is not, and that could be cool. League of Legends do something similar. I'm pretty sure at the end of the season they rank the teams in where they spent the money. So they don't release the numbers, but they say like this team spent the most, this team spent the second most, the third most, whatever.
Interesting.
And that's not bad because then you can kind of correlate where they placed in the year or how much success they had with how much they spent. And a team could come in spending the least, but maybe they're the third best in the world. Like for example, like a big, for example, I'd imagine they wouldn't pay as much as Astralis or EG for obviously. And yet their results are probably comparable sort of across different periods of the year. So that's like a cool way you can look at it without teams sort of saying how much they spent and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think there's cool ways you could do it without actually releasing the numbers. But if you do want to release numbers, I would never do it solo. You would do it with a group of teams, so at least there's some comparisons can be made. Because at the moment, people are comparing Cloud9 to nothing. They're just guessing what they think these teams have paid and what not. Like for example, 100 Thieves, like no one
Yeah.
knew what we paid. The numbers are way off. So like it's just everyone just guesses.
Well, everyone, I mean, I think you just nailed it, though, right? You lose all your leverage if it's in the public. And I think all the
Yeah,
other TOs, or all the other team owners, not the tournament organizers, but the team owners, are looking at this going, you idiots, why are you doing this, right? And so when Henry is saying, I hope to be able to lead the way, uh, I don't know, the whole thing felt, but the thing is, I don't want to knock Henry either, because Henry's
no,
obviously
neither.
coming in and trying to rock the boat. Like that's the whole point, is that he's trying to rock the boat. And actually, it turns out we actually have a team owner in the chat right now. Good morning from SK. It is also a question of where does the money come from? Teams try to create a rat race once they have money. Yeah, SK the Slash, actually one of the longest standing team owners, owner of SK Gaming, but would be pretty well placed to talk about it. And I mean, I guess that's why we're in the situation we are, is all this money coming in and artificially inflating the player salaries, because all of a sudden the team owners get to wave their money dicks around and start saying, oh, I can pay this much for this guy, or I can pay this buyout. And then all of a sudden, here we are being, with the teams locked in to these rosters and unable to move because it costs too much money now to actually make any changes. Hence Na'Vi.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, if you really wanted to make an impact or change the game, so to speak, like they claimed, I would have just done it at the end, once you had your entire roster locked into your contracts,
Sure.
because then at least then the other orgs don't benefit from your boldness. It's cool you have the transparency, like the players will, the fans will still have that. Maybe it'll be a week later, but I mean, who cares? At least they get the transparency, like which is what your outcome was, I assume. But then at least you don't get slammed by the other orgs.
I,
Because I can't imagine the orgs would give you any discounts or any sort of leverage at all. After S3 tag, they saw that one, the Woxic one, Alex one, like there were some pretty decent numbers. It was clear they had a lot of money to burn, and good on them. That's cool, but yeah, just yeah, a little bit rough
I mean, I imagine most
to
of the other
do
teams
it one by one.
are kind of just sitting there going like, "What?" I mean, because the team's got to function in the same way where they at least try. They try to screw each other over, but at the same time, they're trying to help each other out. It's like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of situation, and then one of them goes rogue, and well, then gets kind of slapped around by the others, and then everybody goes back into the tribe, and it's all good and hunky dory again, and we get the Louvre agreement, or you get Never mind. We'll leave it there. But I was just thinking of Nyholm and the whole. But that's like the Thorin video going on about the Flashpoint antics, right? Why he left and what was happening there. It's just outrageous what was going on. But I think my beef with this whole situation is that it's not our first rodeo when it comes to players joining up, and we've all seen players get kicked after a couple of months, right? And so when I think that was my gripe when Henry was going out, it's not so much like the amount, because fine, fair enough, if you have the money and you want to pay your players that much, good on you. And yeah, I agree with your point. This is just shooting yourself in the foot when it comes to negotiations. But whatever, if you feel like you got enough money and you've got the leverage, and who you're negotiating with, you're willing to spend the money, fine. But I don't like this whole angle that teams seem to be leaning into now, where they're announcing like, oh, this is a 3-year deal with this player, 5-year deal with this player, security. This is a family. We really want to do everything we can to keep these guys on board and give them everything they possibly need to progress as players and human beings and all this. And oh wait, hold on, he's not performing. Actually, get that guy the fuck out of here. 2 months? Yeah, okay, get him out. We don't need that guy here. Like. This whole angle where they announced a 3-year deal and then traded him after 3 months, and you're like, wait, what happened to that multi-year deal scenario? Where did that go? Oh, I guess that's not a thing anymore. Like, is there even a minimum? Would that be a thing to have a minimum, like a minimum guarantee, or is that hurting you as a team? What are you thinking about that?
I would be surprised if they didn't have stuff in their contracts that they get paid out at least 3, 5, 6 months, a year of salary if they do get dropped.
If they get dropped, okay, so there's a contract that's giving them some form of like a severance package, I guess.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was the full amount, and I'd be surprised if it was zero. I think it'd be somewhere in between.
Okay.
6 months, 9 months, a year, depending on how long they've been on the roster. You could do something like the first year is guaranteed, so that's 12 months. They played for 3, so they'd get the other 9. Something like that would be my guess. I think that's the way the scene's sort of going at the moment, is a lot of sort of like, I guess, semi-guaranteed contracts. I don't think anyone's doing full, but I could be wrong. And I don't think players would sign for no guarantees. So I'd say it would be somewhere in between.
I mean, Slash is saying that as well in the chat, that you have labor laws as well, but not everybody lives in Deutschland. Slash. So labor laws, schmabor laws, it depends on where you're at, I guess. But yeah, no, okay, fair enough. I mean, I suppose when you have leverage, you get to ask for the fun stuff like guarantees, etc., and making sure that you get that 6 month at least. I mean, that must be happening, right? Because Woxic isn't making any waves since he left Cloud9, so I'm guessing he got to pay off, and then he's just kind of sitting waiting in the wings for COVID to die down before he makes a comeback. He's probably got money. He's probably not hurting, and so fine, fair enough. I guess if he was really getting screwed, we'd have heard something.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it may not even be at full. Like I've heard of things where it's a reduced, because you're not actually really playing, you're not contributing. They don't require you to turn up to a fake practice or anything. Like, you're literally doing nothing. It could be at a reduced rate. I think would be pretty standard as well across a few teams, at least anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you might get more time, but it's at a reduced rate, or it could be sort of just a few or 6 sort of months at full rate. I'd say it'd be something around there. People can probably piece together and figure out roughly, what people would be getting, and that would be my guess if I had to guess. But
so
I said, like,
I
was just going to say, like, my position isn't necessarily that what they're doing was awful. Like, I actually like the idea. I just think the timing was just off. If you really wanted to do it, I just would have done it at the end of the roster once everyone's locked in, because then at least the teams don't benefit or profit from your boldness.
Profit from your boldness, or do you think Henry would have been able to influence the teams to do the same? Is there a world in which this becomes a trend for CS teams, where they announce how much they're buying players for, trading players for, it all becomes public knowledge, and that's just something that we function within the scene?
No. I don't think anyone would voluntarily just jump into that. Like I said, if the Louvre and all the teams that were in it got together and decide they'd all do it, then maybe, because then at least you're not giving away too much to your direct sort of competitors.
Mm-hmm.
But one or two teams is not. I would never agree to it anyway. Yeah, because like if you are the team that pays a lot, like let's take for example like Complexity, like that's a good example. Like
Sure.
everyone knows, and the general vibe is they pay a lot, right? Like everyone gets that vibe. They've got some good players, and we heard little rumblings here and there of what they paid for Blame F, Config, JKS, Poison, and Rush. Like people seem to think they got the impression they pay a lot, but they've never released the numbers. So any player would know if they got contacted by Complexity that they could probably get paid pretty well, but they don't. But that's the players that know, and that's the org that's paying knows, but not the other orgs. I mean, they can guess, but if you've got the money, you can let the player know that you can pay by offering them a big contract. Like I don't think it needs to be public.
Mm-hmm. Probably just stays on the down low regardless. I was just thinking, like, could you have a journalist get a hold of that? I mean, I'm sure Richard has got ideas. He does seem to have moles in every little hole, but it does make me wonder if that information is floating out there. We just don't have access to it, obviously.
Yeah, and the other thing that I don't think people realize is the players talk as well between each other
Of
for
course.
multiple teams.
Yeah.
So they know exactly. They go to the teams of a similar sort of standing and they ask what they got and when did they sign, and then they use that as leverage and as a starting negotiation point to what they want when they join a new org. That's pretty common.
Yeah. Well, it's funnily enough. It's funny how that works. Casters tend to do the same thing. So
yeah,
that would work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Why would you go? We're having like a 3-hour conversation. I feel like we need to get the Slash in here. Would you be all right with that? He's probably got a busy schedule. There's a different thing between typing it out in chat and hopping on a Discord. But open invitation, Mr. Slash, if you want to join in on this conversation, you're more than welcome. But yeah, no, it's a fun. It's just a fun topic because it felt like Henry just came in here and decided to just try and shake things up. And Cloud9 were probably in a position where they were open to do the same just because they're the team that have been openly complaining about the current ecosystem in CS and how it's so difficult to make money in Counter-Strike. And so maybe they were in there as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they were in on it where it's like, hey, maybe we can rock the boat and we can shake things up because we're not happy with the situation as it stands anyways. I mean, clearly they're not happy with the situation considering they've just pulled the plug on the whole project after just several months, not even really giving the team even a year to try and work out. So I mean, they were just looking to rock things up and see where the chips fell, and I'm guessing they just weren't happy with where it fell because they're packing up shop.
Yeah, like I said, I'm sure there was reasons to do it. Off the top of my head, I would imagine that they realized it would cost them this much money when they put out some initial sort of feelers, and they thought, well, this would be a good way to maybe grab some fans because it worked for Complexity. Everyone saw how passionate Jason was putting his money where his mouth is and building the juggernaut. They probably thought it could work for them.
Sure.
And they could sort of harness a bit of sort of community sort of spirit of sticking to CS and paying a lot of money and stuff like that. So I can imagine that was probably a driving point. I'm just thinking, I had another one off the top of my head, but now I've forgotten. Also, there was a vibe going around on Reddit specifically in the fan sort of circles that people were suggesting that Cloud9 didn't pay a lot in the past for players and rosters and esports in general, which I think was an incorrect misconception. But I think that this might have stamped that out, or been an attempt maybe a little bit to stamp that out, that Cloud9 is an industry leader in growth and wealth, but also in taking care of their players. I think it might have been a bit of a statement there as well. So like I said, there's probably heaps of reasons why they did it. They're not silly people.
Yeah.
I just think when you're doing it by yourself, you made it quite hard.
You're putting yourself out there. It was a risk. This is a couple weeks back now, 2-3 weeks back. I made a video where it was just, the shift needs to happen here for Henry, where it's like, okay, we tried to get the instant return on the investment. That didn't work out, and now we need to shift into the long term. Because the pieces were there on the team. It looked like you could do something with that team. You just needed time. You needed a lot of time to shape it up and get it going, and also maybe a boot camp, for crying out loud, considering I don't think any of those players saw each other, apart from those, Floppy, I think, and Zeppa were together in Serbia. But apart from that, nobody, like the team didn't, they were just all names on a screen. They weren't, they hadn't actually met face to face. They hadn't had a boot camp. The way that we saw Complexity really kick it up a notch when they all got into, I guess they went to Serbia too, but they all had that boot camp in Serbia, and all of a sudden they started just ripping heads off, a whole new level from them when they were looking shaky a little bit before. Cloud9 didn't even get the chance to do that because of this whole Corona situation, right? So it just feels like a comedy of errors, unfortunately, for Cloud9. Just one thing going wrong after another, and then eventually, what started out as a really big, let's say, plan, just kind of fell in on itself.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that they got into it. I'm trying to think when exactly it was. I think
September, October last year. Yeah, I think it was right before
into Corona. So like they must have known. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it was right before Flashpoint 2.
That was the worst point. So yeah, that was like the worst part of Corona, sort of. Well, in my sort of Australian aspect of what it was like in Europe and America. But I feel like around that time, because it was colder, it was like the worst part of Corona, like September, October, November, December for those continents anyway. So like they obviously knew going into it that would be a challenge. No one really knew the extent of it, I guess, but still, you're agreeing to create a team in the middle of a pandemic. So yeah.
All right. Let me see. What can we do here that makes sense? Well, you know what? I think what we're going to do here is I'm going to just end this video here, and then we'll start a new one, and we'll get Slash on, and we can have a little bit broader conversation. If you want to hang around, I don't want to take up all your evening, actually, Gomez. This was off the cuff. I don't know if you're busy or not.
No, that's all right. I'll take another 5-10 minutes or so. And then
yeah, perfect. Let's do that. Okay, cool. So we'll call that here. Thanks, everybody.